Hello, welcome to the Rational National Live. It's April 30th, 2021. Like the new special effects there on the graphic, smoke blowing. By the way, happy birthday, Tyler Hackner, 19 years old. I wish I could be 19 years old, but with the same brain that I have now, which I guess is not possible. But enjoy it. Have a good birthday. If you're in Canada, have your first drink. If you're not in Canada, you can come to Canada, get COVID, and have your first drink. Do it all in one. So how about that? All right, a lot of fun stories today. A lot of clips. I know people like the clips. In fact, when it comes to Friday streams, I should probably do more clips. It just makes it easier on me to prep stories properly. But a lot of stories today. So before I even get to any preview of what's to come, rationalnational.com/join. That's the Patreon page. In fact, let me move to the chat. Here we go. So that's the Patreon page. Link is also below the video, patreon.com/therationalnational, or you can join on YouTube or send super chats in, or all the above, even better. Also PayPal link below there as well. So there we go. The chat's always like a minute late, unfortunately, because I stream in 1080p. But yes, glad you all enjoy the effects. Now, let me give you a little preview of what's to come in today's show. So I'm going to shortly here show you a series of clips from Biden's speech this week that shows Republicans and their reactions to his most popular statements of the night. I found the entire acting around these, whether it's the joint session of Congress, this speech, or the usual State of the Union that comes next year. The acting that the lawmakers have here, it's so stupid. But I'll show you some of that. Joe Rogan responds to the uproar over his vaccine comments, so I will discuss that. Also, a Republican asks a scientist about a tracking device in the vaccines, which of course is not real. But I'm actually going to defend this lawmaker. I'll show you why. Also, Cornel West tells CNN how he feels about Biden so far. And a Miami school bans vaccinated teachers. Of course, Florida. All right. And maybe a Doug Ford story that I kind of half prepared. So I may do that one as well. I don't know. I haven't decided. And possibly some other just random stories I didn't get to. As always, there's a bunch of stories I cannot prep in time for the show, but maybe some of them are, or some of them are definitely don't require too much explanation. So maybe I'll just share some of that. All right. Let me start off here. Where should we start with? Okay. As I was rewatching President Biden's speech to Congress this week, I noticed that Republicans pouted during the most inoffensive and, in fact, popular aspects of Biden's speech. So I put together a series of clips here showing the hilarious reactions from Republican lawmakers to Joe Biden, and then a special clip at the end of the sequence, and I think you'll see what it is.
Let's lower deductibles for working families on the Affordable Care Act. And let's lower prescription drug costs. We know how to do this. Let's give Medicare the power to save hundreds of billions of dollars by negotiating lower drug prescription prices. Let's raise the minimum wage to $15. No one working 40 hours a week, should live below the poverty line. But it's time for corporate America and the wealthiest 1% of Americans to just begin to pay their fair share. Just their fair share. We're going to reform corporate taxes so they pay their fair share and help pay for the public investments their businesses will benefit from as well. Trickle-down economics has never worked, and it's time to grow the economy from the bottom and the middle out. We all know how outrageously expensive drugs are in America. In fact, we pay the highest prescription drug prices of anywhere in the world, right here in America. Nearly 3 times for the same drug, nearly 3 times what other countries pay.
All right. Bernie Sanders there was a special clip at the end. You can tell that he's smiling behind that mask as Joe Biden is using his language on the insane cost of pharmaceuticals. So some good rhetoric there from Biden. As I discussed in my breakdown video comparing his speech to Jamal Bowman's response, this speech was fine from Biden, but it doesn't really mean much if you don't have the mechanism to actually get any of it passed. Of course, getting rid of the filibuster being a very important piece of that. So while the rhetoric is there, we still have yet to see the actual actions. That said, let me just comment on some of what we watched there. So Lauren Boebert, I believe it was, shaking her head at Biden, pointing out the insane cost of drugs. Ted Cruz as well, just sitting there with a dumb look on his face. Mitt Romney, who has a net worth of $250 million, was just sitting there looking angry after Joe Biden discussed the need to raise the wage to $15 an hour and raise the corporate tax rate. I understand there is so much acting in politics, but how does this help them? Like, if Republicans want to pretend that they care about the working class, and they have tried to pretend, especially people like Josh Hawley pretends that the Republican Party represents the working class, at least pretend as well to care about the parts of this speech that actually help the working class. But it goes to show you that the entire party, and to be fair, both parties, full of actors, but I don't know how it even helps their case to do what they did there. And during that speech, Biden actually helped Republicans by claiming that we worked together to pass stimulus checks for the American people. Not a single Republican voted for the American Rescue Plan, yet Joe Biden gave Republicans credit anyway. So you see how he's going above and beyond in terms of trying to reach out to Republican lawmakers. But obviously, there is no way to work with these people, and he shouldn't even try to work with them. But just to show you, the total divide here, when it comes to bipartisanship, it's only Republican lawmakers that really do not care at all about doing anything to help people. Okay, let me go to the next story. In fact, I have 2 stories in a row that don't require me to really prep anything. But that said, we'll be right back. right, I'm back. You like that effect as well? The rain on the window? Man, we are turning things up here at the Rational National. First I got smoke at the beginning, now I have rain. Who knows what's next? But let me get to this Joe Rogan story. This is maybe my favorite story of the week, or of today. So earlier this week, I covered Joe Rogan's misinformation about the coronavirus vaccine, where he advised healthy 21-year-olds to not get it, as if the vaccine is somehow more dangerous to healthy 21-year-olds than actual COVID-19. Well, thankfully, he's walked back his statements, yet still does not appear to understand the impact and influence that he has. So I have a couple of clips here. Let me start with this first one.
I didn't say I'm not an anti-vax person.
Right.
In fact, I said I believe they're safe, and I encourage many people to take them. My parents were vaccinated. I just said I don't think that if you're a young, healthy person that you need it. Their argument was you need it for other people.
So you don't transmit the virus.
That makes more sense.
So
but that's a different argument. That's
I'm
a different
young,
conversation.
not so healthy person.
Now, okay, so I have another clip coming up. But yes, I'm glad Joe Rogan cleared this up, at least slightly. But the goal of vaccinating is to get to herd immunity. This is not a different conversation or a different thing. This is the same conversation. We're still talking about vaccines. The entire goal of vaccines, that the only way to eliminate COVID-19 is to get to herd immunity, making sure that there is nowhere for COVID-19 to spread and mutate. So that's the big worry right now, is there are all these variants, and the longer we leave COVID-19 to mutate, the greater chance there is that there will be a mutation of COVID-19 that will essentially be more powerful than the vaccines that are currently rolling out. Which is why, I mean, this is a different discussion, but this is why there's a big discussion around waiving the IP rights on these vaccines so that they can be mass produced in larger quantities and be given worldwide, as opposed to, I mean, some countries apparently have to wait till 2024 to get vaccinated. If it's these same vaccines and you're allowing COVID to mutate in that time, the vaccines being produced now simply are not going to be effective. So there is a real need to vaccinate everybody immediately, and people like Joe Rogan appear to not understand how powerful they are. So one more clip here.
These are not like planned statements. Let's be real clear.
Yeah.
When I say something stupid, I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say before I say it. I'm just saying it, right? I don't have an off-air and on-air voice. I don't.
No.
I have me.
This is us.
it. I'm not a respected source of information, even for me. If I say things, I'm always going, check on that, Jamie. I don't know if that's true.
Right.
I do that all the time.
Right.
But I at least try to be honest about what I'm saying.
Or what you feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Rogan says here that these are not, quote, these are not planned statements. Obviously, look, I think Rogan, maybe I'm in the minority here. I think Rogan has a good heart. I think he means well. Obviously his statements aren't planned. His podcast is very off the cuff, but that doesn't matter here. We're not judging your character. I'm not judging Rogan's character. I'm concerned about the impact of his message. So when you have a platform as large as Rogan's is, the guy was paid an estimated $100 million to be on Spotify exclusively. He has a massive audience of millions, the largest podcast on Spotify, arguably, possibly the largest podcast in the entire country or North America in general. And he's putting vaccine misinformation out there. Look, if I make a little mistake on my show, I feel horrible and I correct myself. I'll put a tweet out. I'll do something where I ensure that people are aware that I made this mistake. It's usually small because I research a lot of what I do ahead of time. But say I say something that's wrong, I'll make sure to correct that. But someone like Joe Rogan, who has a much larger audience than I do, much larger, speaks to a lot of impressionable young men who look up to him, who listen to his every word. And by the way, Rogan speaks a lot about health and wellness, so advice about the vaccine isn't completely out of his wheelhouse. the kind of trust that he's built with his audience, for him not to be more conscious of what he is saying and the impact that that has, I just don't understand what world he's living in. Does he truly not understand his impact? This is why it mattered what he said. This is why it turned into a big story. Like, there's nothing wrong, because in that initial clip, he discussed how his 2 kids had COVID-19 and they had like a little fever, but it wasn't a big deal. That's fine. You can, of course, share your personal experiences, but that doesn't mean you then apply that to everybody. No, you look at the actual data and you can say, from personal experience, my kids, it didn't impact them that much, but there are thousands that have ended up in the hospital, thousands that have died, kids that have died from COVID-19. Maybe I should, even though this is my experience, you should not apply my experience to everybody, and you should be careful and aware and listen to healthcare professionals on what to do about the vaccine. So he said some of that here, but Rogan really he doesn't learn. He'll have people in front of him, and often he takes on whatever worldview that person has for that couple of hours. And then he has someone else on and then takes on their worldview for a couple of hours. He doesn't really seem to absorb anything. And I think that's the biggest issue that I have with Rogan, because I was a big avid viewer of his for several years. But it got to the point where you would notice you would have on, dumber and dumber and dumber people, platforming people who really aren't well known, but platforming them to a larger audience, and then taking on whatever that person said in that hour, and then not doing it the next hour, but then having there was never any consistency in what he stood for, except for health and wellness in general, and UFC, things that he actually knows about. But when it comes to other topics, he's just, he moves in the wind, and he has to be aware of his influence here. Now, also, just to be clear, he said he was scheduled in this podcast. He said he was scheduled to get the J&J vaccine before it was then pulled. So he himself plans to get the vaccine. I don't know why. You have somebody who is pro-vaccine, understands the need to get vaccinated, but then tells young people who are healthy to not get vaccinated, as if the vaccine is somehow worse for you than COVID-19. It just doesn't make any sense, and Rogan needs to be a little more aware of the kind of platform and influence that he has. All right. Let me prep the next story. Who said that? DMT and weed are his only passionate issues. That's Rogan from 4 years ago. Then again, I stopped watching him. Maybe he talks more about DMT now. But there was a time. His podcast was great. And he's become more and more out of touch since the Spotify deal. I discussed in my first video on this, he had Dan Crenshaw on his show a couple of weeks ago, and agreed with Dan Crenshaw on his outrage over everyone under 75K, making under 75K, getting stimulus checks. As if people that, basically arguing that if you lost your job, sure, you should get a check, but if you didn't lose your job, then you shouldn't get one. We're talking about 100 millionaire freaking out over people making under 75K getting a stimulus check. It just completely out of touch. And by the way, I just noticed my camera flicker. I may need to get a new camera or a capture card. If that keeps happening, it's happened a couple of times in my other videos as well. It's very frustrating, but I have not figured out the issue just yet. All right. Let me prep the next story. And by the way, SuperChats, of course. How did I forget? I think I just saw one come in. Let me grab that. So first, Erica Kristen says, check out the short YouTube video sometime from act.tv titled Understanding Democratic Socialism. It is really well explained. All right. Junior McGrath, by the way, on that topic, I had Christo Avalis on my show a couple of years ago now, I think, discussing democratic socialism. And I really enjoyed his explanation and definition of it. But sure, check out that video as well. Gina McGrath says, when will we get the Rational National live tour? You'll travel across North America, especially the U.S., and meet all your adoring fans. Bring Humanist Report, other lefties, and it'll be legendary. I don't know. I don't think that's ever happening, but I'm always open, in the future, assuming this pandemic goes away and there's no other pandemics happening. Whether it's, Politicon or whatever, I'm always opening to, one day going to one of those events. At the same time, I'm a new father, so time away from home right now is not really on my mind. But at some point in the future, definitely open to doing that. Daryl Phillips, thank you for becoming a new member. Awesome. All right, I'm going to prep this next story and be right back. All right, I'm back. There was one of my sources that I'm about to use. They changed the text in it, so I couldn't find the quote I was going to use, but I found a replacement. It's all good. All right, so I'll grab more chats or whatever later. Did I just hear a new member? Sleep Grandma ASMR Talk. New member. Thank you, Sleep Grandma. All right, here we go. This fun story. Republican Don Wagner, who represents 3 million Orange County residents, asked a public health official the most ridiculous vaccine-related question. But I am going to defend him a little bit, and I'll explain myself after the clip. And goddamn, my camera's flickering. It's a real problem. All right, here we go.
It's only at the patient's request.
Let me fix the audio.
It's only at the patient's request.
That's correct.
Does it? Is there any intention of tracking folks?
Nope.
Is there any in the vaccine? We heard about an injection of a tracking device. Is that being done anywhere? in Orange County?
I'm sorry, I just have to compose myself. There's not a vaccine with a tracking device embedded in it that I know of exists in the world. Period.
Okay.
All right. Now, obviously, this is the dumbest question of all time. This was, again, asked by Republican Don Wagner to Orange County's top public health administrator, Dr. Clayton Chow. The question, obviously ridiculous. But afterward, Wagner explained himself, and it made a little more sense. So Wagner called a press conference on Thursday defending his tracking device question with Chow by his side, also supporting the lawmaker. Quote, while preposterous to so many of us, thankfully it truly is a myth that we have had to constantly address in Orange County. Chow told reporters, quote, and I know for a fact the supervisor does not indeed believe this myth as he was painted by so many outlets. Wagner said he does not believe in vaccine conspiracies and said such myths have to be called out in public settings. So I'm here to defend Don Wagner. I think he did the right thing here. When there are so many stupid questions that unfortunately we have to deal with, it's important to address them head on. So I think it was important for this lawmaker, especially coming from a conservative here, to ask this question to this healthcare professional and get a clear answer. Now, at the same time, the same people that are thinking that there's, a tracking device in a vaccine may not at all care what a public health professional says, because they may think, oh, they're in on it too. All these people, they want to track us. So like when you get to that level of crazy, there's only so much you can do. But at the very least, addressing this in a public setting, not hiding from it, I think can help to alleviate some of the worries that people may have about the vaccine. So I think it was important for them to address this in this public setting. And just to be extra clear on Don Wagner, he got vaccinated by the J&J vaccine on April 3rd. So this is well before that clip took place. So yes, he's pro-vaccine and just understood the need to address some of these ridiculous questions head on. All right. Dumb question, though. I will say, though, if there's people in your life, friends, family, whoever, that bring up dumb questions like that, or may have some of this anti-vax thoughts in their head, don't be afraid of addressing it, and don't address it by treating them like they're dumb. Like, just treat it like a serious question, and just explain your perspective, as opposed to, oftentimes when you're dealing with people like this, you have a hard time getting information into them. So you have to be very careful about how you're actually discussing or sharing that information. You can't be talking down to them. You can't be treating them like they're stupid. You have to be very careful. If you actually care, again, about educating that person, you have to be very careful about how you're discussing these issues. And still, don't expect them to just take on your view immediately. Often it's about planting seeds, and eventually, enough seeds are planted and that person can change. Sometimes they don't change, but at least you tried. So plant seeds, be careful with how you approach the discussion, and don't get too frustrated, which I know it's hard to do. I have definitely gotten frustrated in similar conversations, but try not to. All right. Cornel West. My Cornel West video is next. Okay. Let me see if I can grab some chats. Law Gnome says, breaking from Columbus, preliminary injunction against the city of Columbus and its police banning excessive force against nonviolent protesters in a scathing 88-page opinion. Interesting. Link in Discord. All right, I'll have to check that out later since I can't research on the fly. But that sounds good as long as they follow the order. Samantha Sider, thank you for your chat. Law Gnome sends another one, but it's cut off, so I have to open up this other screen because YouTube is weird. Lawnome says, also thanks for the great breakdown of the Biden and Bowman speeches. Would it be too meta to do a video on how you pick a new video camera? Oh, I'll discuss it here, but I don't think people would really care if I did a video on it. And it may confuse people if I put up a video on, tech. I'm also not really a tech video creator. There's a very, there are people that's their job, right? So anything I do in terms of picking a new camera is going to look pretty lame, unless it's like a vlog. I could do a vlog on picking a new camera, but it may not even be the camera that's the issue. It may just be, in fact, I think it probably is the capture card, since that is pretty old and stays plugged in most of the time. So I think it gets warm and has issues. But let's hope there's no more problems. I may have to reshoot, in fact, some of this stuff if it becomes a bigger issue. All right. I'll be right back. Somebody whose birthday? Bad Jokes Brian, happy birthday. Also, somebody in the chat, Normie chat, brought up Bill C-10, I think it is. I just heard about this now. I have to read more about this. It looks horrible, especially for someone like me. Just headline here, your free speech is at risk with Ottawa's push to regulate online content. So I'm going to have to see what this is about. This sounds like it's garbage, though. Just based on the headline. But I'm going to have to read more into that. If it's not one thing, it's another. Like, if it's not YouTube, the YouTube algorithm killing us, then it's something else. Just never ending in this line of work. All right. Let me get to this Cornel. Philosopher, intellectual, and activist Cornel West was on CNN International and gave his thoughts on how Joe Biden has surprised him so far, but was also clear to not give him too much credit either. So I'm going to play this and discuss it.
You were not a supporter of Joe Biden when he ran for the president. You supported Bernie Sanders. Now that we're 100 days into the Biden administration, have you revised your assessment of him and maybe think that he could be a little bit like Lyndon Baines Johnson and surprise us, especially on the issue of race?
I think that Biden is going to surprise us. He surprised me. When he went in, my view was that he was tied to 4 crimes against humanity. Mass incarceration, unleashing Wall Street greed with the Glass-Steagall Act repeal, with the invasion and occupation of Iraq, and Israeli occupation. All of those he would not say a critical word about in any substantive way. And in many ways, he was the architect and supporter of them. In coming into office, he hits the issue of Yemen and Afghanistan head on. Relief bill, infrastructure bill. Deeply concerned about police brutality, talks about white supremacy, talks about Jim Crow. He reminds me very much of LBJ, who started as a white supremacist from Jim Crow, Texas, and ended up one of the major forces for good against white supremacy. That's why you never give up on people. You never know which way they're headed. You never know what kind of change they can put forward. If Biden continues in this way, he's going to be very much like LBJ and will be a much stronger force for good against white supremacy on the ground than Barack Obama was. Now, Barack Obama had the symbol because he's brilliant, he's black, he's poised and so forth. Didn't have the courage, didn't have the willingness to fight that Biden does when it comes to this issue, when it comes to a variety of issues. So who would know, who would think that Joseph Biden from Scranton, Pennsylvania, could become such a force for good for progressives? Now, I still have criticisms until he hasn't moved on the Middle Eastern issue the way I would like. And the relation to what's going on in Haiti right now, I'm very critical in terms of the dictatorial rule and his unwillingness to call it into question. So there's a number of things I continue to put pressure on, and I will continue to put pressure on any elected official, no matter what color. But it's always in the name of moral and spiritual issues linked to spreading Hesed to the most vulnerable in any society.
Now, I think this raises a very interesting question. How do you judge a president? Do you judge a president based on your expectations of them, what you expect of them, and if they exceed that? Or do you judge them based on what is required of them in the moment? Because Cornel West here appears to be judging Biden, for at least most of this clip, appears to be judging him based on his low expectations of Biden. So in that sense, yes, I think most people, if you're being objective, you would be surprised by what Biden has done as Joe Biden. But in terms of meeting the moment, clearly he's not there. Medicare for all, not there. Raising the wage to $15 an hour, he says he wants to do it, but they could have overruled the parliamentarian to get it through. They didn't do that. There are a number of more structural issues in America, criminal justice, defunding the police. Biden's not there. There are structural issues that need to be addressed that Biden simply has not addressed, not even rhetorically. Now, that said, there is power in rhetoric. There is symbolism, and rhetoric does matter. It does have an impact, but it only has so much of an impact. The actual impact is the policy, is what is actually done to help people in their daily lives, to improve their material conditions. Biden is simply not there. I mean, we're a few months into this. So yes, you can be impressed by the American Rescue Plan, even though the checks were smaller than what they were supposed to be, but still it had the an improved child tax credit that essentially became a universal basic income if you have children, and they're now trying to extend that as well. It lowered costs, premium healthcare premiums for most Americans. So it had a number of provisions in it that were solid, but still we're talking about tinkering around the edges. So I think it's important. Well, I agree with what a lot of what Cornel West is saying here, or the sentiment that he has here. It's important to also, step back and realize what actually matters. And what actually matters is the president meeting the moment. You can judge a man based on what you expect of him, but that only takes you so far. Biden should be held to a higher standard, that higher standard being what he actually should be doing. Because the reality is, as much as Biden may have moved on some of these issues, or at least his rhetoric has moved, he's never going to become a Bernie Sanders. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't hold him to that standard, a standard that you would hold Bernie Sanders to, or that you would hold any president to in terms of what you should expect of them in the moment. So while I understand what Cornel West is saying here, I hope there's still, and he does, to be fair, critique Biden, critique his history, discusses how Biden still is not meeting his expectations on a number of issues. That's good. But also it's important that we don't become too complacent and just accept this Joe Biden that we have because he's better than what we expected. Just because he's better than what we expected doesn't mean that he's to the point in terms of where he should be in meeting the moment. All right. And by the way, forgot to mention filibuster reform. I mean, none of this is getting done without filibuster reform or getting rid of the filibuster. So ultimately it's all just rhetoric, talking points until the mechanisms are in place to actually get any of what he promised in that joint session of Congress, in that speech. None of it's getting passed until you have those mechanisms in place. All right. Next story I'll have to prep. But let me check the chats. I really want to read this article now. I'm just waiting till the end of this live stream so I can read this article on Bill C-10. Or maybe we'll read it to, how about this? We will read this together. Though it seems kind of long. Maybe we won't. But once I get through all my stories, I want to see what this Bill C-10 is about, because it may impact my livelihood on YouTube. But before I get to any of that, let me grab some of these chats. Rhino Wiki says, judge a president based on previous presidents and if he follows the spirit of the campaign promises. War crimes automatically label a bad president. I hear you. I think it's fair to judge somebody on a president on both on campaign promises, both on what you expect of them and if they met that bar, and also what you would expect a leader to do in the moment in terms of what is required of them. I don't think it just makes sense to judge a president based on their own promises, because they may promise nothing. And Biden kind of did almost promise nothing, at least on certain issues like healthcare. And even then, I mean, he's definitely nowhere near meeting his own bar in terms of a public option when it comes to healthcare. So, yeah, I think it makes sense to have multiple ways to look at the issue, but it also doesn't make sense to be satisfied with Joe Biden right now. Okay, I'm going to prep this next story, so I'll be right back. All right, I am back with the most insane story of the week. But before I do that, just check in if there's any chats. If not, I will get to the next one. All right, let's get going. Dealing with a lot of windows in front of me. All right. A private school with 2 campuses in Miami have banned vaccinated teachers. Yes, they have banned teachers that have been vaccinated. Now, this is Centner Academy, which is promoted as a happiness school. This is for students in pre-kindergarten through 8th grade. One of its co-founders, Leela Centner, informed employees, quote, with a very heavy heart that if they choose to get a shot, they would have to stay away from students. More on this from the New York Times. An example of how misinformation threatens the nation's effort to vaccinate enough Americans to get the coronavirus under control, Ms. Setner, who has frequently shared anti-vaccine posts on Facebook, claimed in the letter that, quote, reports have surfaced recently of non-vaccinated people being negatively impacted by interacting with people who have been vaccinated. Quote, even among our own population, we have at least 3 women with menstrual cycles impacted after having spent time with a vaccinated person, she wrote, repeating a false claim that vaccinated people can somehow pass the vaccine to others and thereby affect their reproductive systems. They can do neither. This is batshit insane. This is actively endangering students. How can you possibly think the vaccine is contagious? You have an actual virus that is contagious, that is real, with real children in hospital. Real children have died, have gotten sick from COVID-19. But no, the vaccine may be contagious. And even though there's no data on this whatsoever, it's all made up. No teachers that are vaccinated are allowed in this school. Completely insane. So more here. This is from some data from the American Academy of Pediatrics. As of April 22nd, over 3.71 million children have tested positive for COVID-19 since the onset of the pandemic. After increases in new reported cases in the past couple of weeks, we have seen a slight decrease in new cases this week, nearly 80,000 new child cases. So this is the decrease. The slight decrease is down to, only 80,000 new child cases. Is there data showing that there's maybe 100,000 cases of children getting being impacted by their parents getting vaccinated, somehow impacting their bodies in some way? Like, it's just, this whole world where they will reject any information coming out. And look, this really stems from a distrust in big pharma, which I understand. Yes, there are certain, like painkillers, for example, that are overprescribed and lead to deeper issues later on. That is a real thing. Oftentimes, there's not enough discussion about health and fitness, about nutrition. Doctors usually just, rely on a pill to fix a problem. So that is I think the basis for a lot of this mistrust. But then when it gets to the point of you thinking that the vaccine is contagious, you've really just completely lost it. I mean, it's one thing to have a critique of big pharma, a critique of how doctors operate, a critique of there being a lack of focus on health and wellness. That's fine. And that's correct. That's a correct critique. But you cannot then extend that to everything, where every data point coming out of the CDC or whoever is fake because they're out to vaccinate people to then impact their menstrual cycles. Like, what is the motivation here? So more on what is actually in this letter. So in the letter, Ms. Sentner gave employees 3 options. Inform the school if they had already been vaccinated so they could be kept physically distanced from students. Let the school know if they get the vaccine before the end of the school year. Quote, as we cannot allow recently vaccinated people to be near our students until more information is known. Wait until the school year is over to get vaccinated. Teachers who get the vaccine over the summer will not be allowed to return, the letter said, until clinical trials on the vaccine are completed. They're completed now. They're done. And then only if a position is still available at the time, effectively making teachers' employment contingent on avoiding the vaccine. Ridiculous. And people send their kids to private school thinking they're going to get a better education. Well, here you apparently sent your kid to a school who thinks the vaccine is contagious. Unbelievable stupidity. Some of the stuff you have to laugh, because if you don't, especially someone like me who covers this stuff every day, if you don't laugh, you will end up jumping off a bridge. Because it gets to the point where you're aware of how tiny you are, what little impact you have. I can't save that person. I can't save that school, but they exist, and people are being negatively impacted, likely getting COVID or losing their job over it, over just complete insanity. All right. Well, that's my main stories. Look at that. Wow. Fun time. I'm just thinking about this article I want to read. So let me, are there more chats? If there are, I'll grab some. And then Maybe I'll do the Doug Ford story, though it's not. I'll play the Doug Ford clip and we'll see where it goes. But I'm not sure there's really enough meat on that bone for me to do a lot on it. All right, let me see here. You know what? Sure, why not? Quickly do this Doug Ford video and see what else we can do. Ontario Premier Doug Ford came out today with a speech pretty much blaming everybody else but himself, once again. Now, this is a government that finally, recently passed paid sick days, 3 paid sick days, not a whole lot. NDP were proposing 10 paid sick days. Ford government came back with 3, whatever. But I want to play this clip of Doug Ford appearing to not really understand that he has the ability to limit the spread of these variants, and instead puts all the blame on airports. Check this out.
Last week, the new Indian variant was reported here in Ontario, and it didn't swim here, I can tell you that. In fact, we learned yesterday that 90% of average daily cases this week are variants of concern. The same variants that fueled our devastating third wave, and they got in because of weak border measures. I can't stress this enough. We will never get ahead of this virus if we can't keep these deadly new variants out of our country. The borders, land and air, they're federal jurisdiction. And I assure you, if I had the power, I would close down Pearson Airport immediately. I would shut down the land border crossings to only those who are absolutely essential. Because I would do everything in my power to stop a vaccine-resistant variant from getting into our country and bringing a 4th wave with it.
Now, there's no doubt that more should have been done to prevent the variants from coming into the country. But shutting down the most trafficked airport in Canada is a lot tougher than shutting down warehouses and big box retailers that are spreading the virus. So Doug Ford, throughout this entire pandemic, has been unwilling to actually challenge corporate power, has been unwilling to do what is necessary in terms of shutting down warehouses, vaccinating people that are frontline workers specifically. He's been unwilling to do that, and that is why you see the spread of the virus and the variants now take complete hold in Canada and especially in Ontario. The people ending up in the ICUs are frontline workers, people that work in grocery stores, Amazon warehouse workers. These are issues that Ford, through his own actions, could have dealt with, but instead putting the blame on the Liberal government, apparently, for not shutting down all the airports, where, yes, again, more could have been done to stop the spread of those variants, but to just completely take no responsibility and claim that's the reason for the spread of these variants when other provinces aren't experiencing it as bad as we are. Clearly, Doug Ford could have done a lot more. Now, there's one more clip here I want to share with you. Right here.
Much. My questions to the Thank you very much. My questions to the Deputy Premier. The Premier's on his 10th paid sick day today, and we know that he still has another 4 in the bank. But for some reason, he thinks that frontline workers only deserve 3 temporary days. What's good for one privileged worker, in this case the Premier, is not good enough for essential workers who do the fundamental work in this province. So my question through you, Speaker, to the Deputy Premier, can you explain why the Premier, who says he's for the people, thinks that he deserves better than the vast majority of Ontarians?
Later. Oh, Mr. Speaker, if the government accepted the NDP's proposal or the Ontario Liberal proposal, there wouldn't be businesses open in the province, because you would have crushed thousands of small businesses across the province, because you're going to put 100% of the cost on those small mom and pop shops across the province, which is wrong. Mr. Speaker, our plan is generous, it is flexible, and it's open for workers. We're going to stand with workers and families to get through COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, Ontario is the first in Canada to offer double payments for the federal sick days program to $1,000 per week for 4 weeks, plus 3 paid sick days. That's 23 days in total, Mr. Speaker. This includes a time off for people who get vaccinated, who have to recover from vaccinations. If they're having mental health issues related to COVID-19, we call on the NDP to stand with us and stand with workers in Ontario.
So first, to address the, Doug Ford has been in isolation for 10 days. This is a guy that, again and again, I think it's like 20 plus times now, they voted down 10 paid sick days for Ontarians, and then eventually passed their own version of paid sick days. But you see here the amount of privilege someone like Doug Ford has, the ability to self-isolate, stay home, not have to worry about it. Meanwhile, not supporting paid sick days. But in terms of the government's plan here, so the issue is still that this is through the federal plan. So a lot of the issues that remain with the federal paid sick days still exist with their version of it here, where you have to wait. You have to first submit that you can get those days off. You have to wait to get paid. Oftentimes it can take up to 4 weeks to get paid. Whereas if it's done through your employer, it's easier first for the actual employee, because it's already guaranteed through the employer. The employer is aware of it, knows about it. Whereas with the federal paid sick days, you sort of have to hope that your employer doesn't care if you take those days off. But if it was through your employer, it's easier to get those days off, and that your pay would not be interrupted. So you would still get paid like you normally would any other week. But through the federal program, there's a whole process you have to wait, and that's why it's a larger issue. But still, yeah. We are finally seeing, maybe, slightly, a downturn with COVID-19 in the province. It's getting potentially, it's at least stagnating at this point. It's not growing at the pace that it was growing. But unless we really continue these lockdown measures, unless people actually stay home, unless employers allow people to work from home, which is another big part of the issue, then we're going to keep dealing with this ultimately until everyone's vaccinated, and that may take up until mid to late summer. So I hope we don't have to wait that long. But if we took these measures seriously, if the government took measures seriously and actually did what was necessary to actually stop the spread of the virus, vaccinate frontline workers first of all, then we would see numbers come down a lot quicker than they have. Okay. All right. Audio is awful. My audio or the audio on the video? Very important distinction there. And by the way, if the audio is awful here, I want to know. Because I know camera's having issues, which is not a good sign. All right. I'm going to play. So I have no more prepared stories left, but there's some shit I just got to play because it's so ridiculous. Let's check out Dave Rubin. Once again, outdoing himself here. Here he was talking to Mike Huckabee about the... I don't even know how to explain this. I'm going to play the clip, and then we will laugh together.
You know, they say they're for women, but they're not for Sarah Huckabee Sanders. They're not for Nikki Haley. They say they're for black people. They're not for Candace Owens or Thomas Sowell or, any Larry Elder, people like that. Or they'll say they're for gay people, but they're certainly not for someone like Peter Thiel, who's a supporter of Trump. So this is the bizarre reality that the left has created.
Being for equality, being pro-human rights, means you must agree with the views expressed by every individual in that group. How completely insane is Dave Rubin. And really, just how lazy is this argument? Maybe there are some liberals that put that idea out there that it's identity over everything, but that's not typically what it means to stand up for women or gay rights or whatever. It's about standing up for the human rights of those individuals, ensuring that society treats them equally as everyone else, as essentially white men. So that's the actual movement. That's the argument. It's not about agreeing with the views of everybody in those groups. Just bonehead. It's amazing the amount of money you can make if you allow yourself to be used as a tool for the right wing. But how useful of a tool is Dave Rubin really? Does he actually have an audience still that watches him seriously, that watches him to be informed? I mean, he was used initially as the gay liberal that turned conservative, and that was his whole shtick. But now he's not even good at what he does. Like there are good right-wing pundits, or not even good, but better. Ben Shapiro is better. I wouldn't say, his arguments aren't sound either, but the way he delivers them is at least better than the way Dave Rubin does. There are people who are more successful in this space. Dave Rubin really offers nothing and still manages to get paid the big bucks for saying the dumbest shit. All right, that's that clip. What else did I have today? Andrew Yang. So maybe I'll do a full story on this. I will show you this, though. This Andrew Yang's UBI appears to be garbage. So Andrew Yang, of course, running for mayor in New York. Let me read through this if I can see it. So Alex Koch here tweeting out, wow, Yang's UBI plan for NYC is total garbage. Yang, who is now running for New York City mayor, has downsized his guaranteed income proposal for his current campaign. An average of $2,000 a year would be given to 500,000 low-income recipients. The price tag for Yang's New York City proposal would be $1 billion per year, which the candidate said he would produce through resolving inefficiencies in social programs and reallocating some current assistance like homeless services that he says would be made duplicative, as well as through private philanthropy. This is the libertarian view of universal basic income. Completely getting rid of the safety net and replacing it with UBI. And in this case, $2,000 a year, which is a lot different than what Yang used to discuss in terms of, what was it, $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month, whatever it used to be. It was a lot more than $2,000 a year. So you see here, and the idea of reallocating from homeless services, which already are completely underfunded. I haven't followed this race too closely, but from my understanding, there isn't really anybody else in the race who is as big of a name as Andrew Yang is, which is kind of scary. So I want to see how this all goes. If Andrew Yang ends up becoming the mayor of New York City, that will be crazy. All right. What else we got here? And by the way, there's more to that story. I may actually do a full video on this, since Andrew Yang has sort of been more in the news recently. I think I'll stop there. So I want to indulge me for a second. I want to read through this article. Let me bring this up. Wait a second. There we go. I want to read through this article. So apparently I may be screwed. Liberals have been discussing doing something with regulating online content for a while now. Now I got to find out what exactly this is about. Before I do this, I just want to make sure I'm not keeping any of you waiting with a super chat. I don't think I am, though, but just double checking. One here we go. Karen goes to Washington saying, keep up the good work, David. Thank you, Karen. All right. Let's read through some of this. So, Liberal government says controversial changes to broadcasting bill will only apply to professional content. Does that count for me? Am I professional content? Federal government is facing an uproar over controversial changes to a bill that would bring videos and other content posted to social media sites like YouTube under the purview of the country's broadcasting regulator. Am I professional content? I think that's kind of what matters here. The changes to Bill C-10 made at the behest of Liberal MPs on the Heritage Committee would allow the CRTC, to regulate user-generated content uploaded to social media platforms, much as it regulates radio and TV content now. This is fucking batshit insane. The government says the changes apply only to professional content and are necessary to make widely successful online streaming services and apps contribute to Canadian culture. But critics argue they amount to an unjust infringement on the Charter of Rights guarantee of free speech. Here's what you need to know. So, Heritage Minister introduced Bill C-10 in November. Intent was to modernize the Broadcasting Act for an era when Canadians increasingly consume music, movies, TV shows, videos, and podcasts, either online or through mobile apps. The government says the objective is to ensure that digital streaming services enjoying booming revenues from online traffic contribute to the creation, production, and promotion of Canadian content, which, to be fair, I do, but I'm not sure if it still applies to me. Unlike the online platforms, Canadian distributors of broadcast content such as Rogers, Shaw, Bell are required to pay a... If passed, Bill C-10 would subject online streaming platforms that operate in Canada, like Netflix, Spotify, Crave, and Amazon Prime. Okay, that's different, to the Broadcasting Act, allowing the CRTC to impose similar regulations on them. But does YouTube fall into that? Such regulations could compel them to pay into funds that support Canadian musicians, writers, and artists. Okay. So the amendments, I guess, is what I'm worried about here. That meant professionally produced shows or songs streamed on Crave, Netflix, Amazon Prime, or Spotify would be subject to CRTC regulation, while music videos on YouTube, posts made to Facebook, or podcasts uploaded to Apple Podcasts would be exempt because they are uploaded with to those platforms by individual users. Our approach is balanced, and we have made the choice to exclude a number of areas from the new regime. User-generated content will not be regulated. But the exclusion for user-generated content was removed by members of the Heritage Committee last Friday. Another amendment approved by the committee on Monday would grant the CRTC the power to regulate smartphone apps as well. Okay, so I'm good then. Critics say these amendments could give the CRTC the power to regulate the posts that millions of Canadians upload every day to platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So I'm not good. Michael Geist, who I am aware of, said those posts could be treated as programs, which would allow the regulator to set terms and conditions with that content. The kind of speech that many Canadians engage in on these platforms is just basic, fundamental freedom of expression that does not require and should not be subject to any sort of regulation or regulatory oversight by a broadcast regulator. Also, it wouldn't be possible. Like, there is so much content uploaded to YouTube by Canadians. What is the CRTC going to do? Look through every video? Like, it's not possible. They couldn't physically do this. They wouldn't be able to. Google, which owns YouTube, has also raised free speech concerns. This potentially extends CRTC regulation to all audio and visual content on the internet. So, Bill C-10 is meant to target services that curate and commission music and video content and professional series, films, and music, not posts made by individual Canadians. Okay. It's still, in terms of me, I think I'll be fine, but I don't know how I feel about the rest of this. All right. Payette said the amended version of Bill C-10 will bring transparency to how Canadian content is shared on YouTube by requiring the company to report to the regulator and attend public hearings. What we're interested in is really having a clear picture of what's happening on YouTube considering professional content. Once we know that, maybe we could have discoverability measures put in place to favor Canadian music. We can have them found fun music as well. I mean, if this can help my Canadian videos perform better, maybe. But I feel like that's not really what's going to happen here. They shouldn't even be playing in any of this space. It's just... I'll read more of this later, but... Or maybe right now. I don't know. I'll have to get more into this later. I think this goes much longer. But looks like I may be okay. But man, the idea of regulating anything on YouTube, just not a good idea. Not at all. Just to add to my Canadian content here, just to make sure I'm not, impacted by this. Here is a list of issues facing Canadians and what they care about. So this actually made me feel pretty good because the deficit, government spending, nobody cares. The vast majority of Canadians don't give a shit except for 48% of conservative voters. That's the issue they care about. Government spending. But everyone else, as you can see here, coronavirus, of course, major issue. Healthcare, up there. Environment, climate change, everybody except for the conservatives. And income inequality, that's an NDP issue, as you can see there. Greens, they care about housing affordability. Well, actually, so do the NDP. But there we go. So I guess highlighted are the top three issues for each party. So for the Greens, the top issues are coronavirus, environment, housing. For the Bloc Québécois, coronavirus, healthcare, environment. For NDP, coronavirus, environment, and income inequality. For the Liberals, coronavirus, healthcare, and environment. For the Conservatives, coronavirus, the economy, deficit, and in total, coronavirus, healthcare, environment. Good. We aren't as dumb as sometimes it seems we are. So that's good to see. All right, I could maybe do more. I don't know. I got some other stories here. They're just not all that. I have not seen this clip, so let's check this out. If there's a video here that I can play. Maybe there's not. Here we go.
Just free college. Think about free college, too. Yeah. If your family doesn't make a lot of money, there's something called a scholarship. You can apply for that right now. We don't have to give free college to every single person. You can apply for a scholarship if you have good grades.
Financial aid.
Exactly. If you make good grades and you've worked your tail off to get into the college, then they can give you a scholarship.
Oh, I'm sure all three of these work so hard to inform their audience. Unbelievable. Why do you want to encourage a dumber electorate, a dumber populace? I mean, for them, I guess it makes sense, but it only makes sense to offer. Now, that isn't to say, just to be clear here, that isn't to say if you don't go to college, you're dumb. But in terms of at least offering people who are unable to afford post-secondary education, offering them 2 years of free college, that this would offend anybody at all is just mind-blowing and really shows you the state of media. All right. Anything else interesting that I saved? This story. Apparently, as I discussed the story at length when it was happening, but I speculated that this may be the case. Unions' evidence in Amazon vote could be grounds for overturning election, U.S. Labor Board said. So I don't think we have a final answer on this just yet. I haven't looked for an update since I saved this story, but we're going to see if anything changes there. That said, the work on the ground, I think, is not ready, or the work that was done on the ground, it doesn't appear that this Amazon warehouse is ready, even close to ready to unionize. But I'm glad they attempted, and I think a lot of lessons were learned in that in that experience, in that process. And at the same time, a lot of people became more aware of Amazon's anti-union activity and were educated by that. So in the next fight, hopefully they go to somewhere that is more, where the ground is more ripe to unionize. I think Staten Island, I heard discussions about potential effort there. That would be a better spot to go. But that said, this may be overturned, so we'll have to see. All right, I think I'm good. It's 4:32. Let me grab these chats. Adam Bryceland says, so David, what do you think about Cori Bush saying the squad all votes alone? If they vote alone, not as a block, there was no squad. What now? I did a video on this. It's a good thing I did a video on this earlier in the week. In fact, where is it? Let me show you right here. So, right here, this one. CNN pushes Cori Bush from the left. Check out that video. I discussed my thoughts on what Cori Bush said in there. Preview. Not smart to say that, but check out that video for all my comments. Kat says, I live in New York City. Why is everyone obsessed with Yang? From Kalinsky to K-Ball. UBI was to replace programs like food stamps and is anti-BDS. Please do video. Yes. I don't understand the obsession with Yang. I mean, I don't know of Kyle and Crystal Ball's obsession with Yang if they have one. I do know he was on their show, so maybe that, sometimes when you have access to certain people, you are, unfortunately, it's human nature to be more inclined to be more open to them. That may be part of the issue here. But apart from them, Yang has serious issues. And actually, by the way, in that interview that they had with Andrew Yang, Kyle did push back quite a bit on Andrew Yang's opposition to BDS. And check out, in fact, I think he put that clip up on his channel. So check that out. It was great, in fact. So I'm not sure if they're still obsessed with Yang or not. Again, those are your words. I'm not sure if they are. But in terms of the general obsession with him, it's because he ran for president. So he is the most well-known figure. This is why people that have no shot at all at winning the presidency run for president, because name recognition. So now wherever Yang goes, people are going to know what he's doing because he ran for president. That's ultimately why there's all this talk about Andrew Yang. But yeah, in terms of his UBI, in terms of his opposition to BDS, in terms of really any issue, Andrew Yang also wasn't even for Medicare for all. I just because Andrew Yang is I guess technically an outsider, doesn't mean he's somebody that should run a country or run the city of New York. I hope that's clear. Being an outsider can be a good thing, but you also have to have everything else, to come with it, including a perspective and policies that are different and will improve people's lives. Everything from Andrew Yang, at least so far during this race for New York City, I have not at all been impressed by. Michael Beeson says mRNA vaccines are not the same as traditional vaccines. mRNA vaccines are gene therapy and ultimately relate to cancer. Listen to Vivaldi's La Folia. Yeah, mRNA vaccines are different. I do agree with you. And in fact, it appears they may have a much greater impact, positive impact on society moving forward, potentially helping with similar viruses to coronavirus that aren't necessarily the COVID-19. But again, a lot of research still going on there. But I'm hoping to get one of the mRNA vaccines personally. Still waiting here in Canada, but I'll take any vaccine that comes. But I would like Pfizer or Moderna. Really, either one doesn't really matter. Okay. I think I saw one more chat, and then I'm going to get out of here. 2 more chats. Radzoso says, one of my all-time favorite players, former Maple Leaf, Patrick Marleau, broke Gordie Howe's record for most NHL games played. He's back with the Sharks now, still going strong at age 41. Really? I didn't know that. 1,768 games played. Damn. Good for him. Fly Chomper Fly says, David, please don't forget that automated AI bots can search and read through content at cyber speeds and can then make mistakes at cyber speeds. I don't get what that's concerning. I don't get what that's concerning. But thank you. Thank you for your chat. Okay. One last one here. Keeping in mind there's about a minute delay on these on the chat versus my video. So if I go and I miss a chat, I apologize. Thomas Power says, Dave, here is a little something for a gender reveal bomb. Seriously, thanks again for all your content. Have a great weekend. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you to everyone who sent in super chats, who are patrons, who joined the show on YouTube, who sent a maybe donation through PayPal. Whatever you did, or just showed up, also great. Whatever you did, thank you so much for doing that. And just double checking, since I heard another chat come in, but I think it was the other one. We are good. All right. Thank you all. I will be on Twitch again this weekend, Sunday night. Come check it out. Probably 8 p.m. Eastern time. So come check me out on Twitch. Link is below the video, twitch.tv/TheRationalNational. All right. See you all then. Later.